Okay, hey everybody. So this is going to be our second rendition of the mock Supreme Court flipped classroom assignment. What we're going to look at today, or whenever you watch this, are some of the tests that we're going to use when we do the mock Supreme Court coming up. And those tests include issues of due process of the law and equal protection of the law. Um, so those are going to be the issues. These come up a lot in our history during the Civil Rights Movement, which is why Chapter 5, Civil Rights, is in your book and what you should have at least skimmed over, if not read everything. It's a lot of the U.S. history, so it's stuff you should be comfortable with and remember from last year. Um, but keep that in mind as we go forward. These tests for due process and the equal protection under the law. This slide is representing the topics that come up when you're looking at an issue of due process and where the law actually comes in and can guarantee those rights. So we're going to look at the Fifth Amendment, Fifth, Sixth, Eighth, and Eighth Amendments. We're going to look at the 14th Amendment, and within those, these two kind of principles have been established: the exclusionary rule and the self-incrimination. Um, so that we're going to highlight those two when we get to them. Now, on your notes, you're going to notice I'm asking you to take a look at the Fifth Amendment. It's in your book. I think the amendments start around like page 70 or so. I think the Fifth Amendment is on 78. I'm pretty sure in your book. But open that up and get the Constitution out, and you'll notice the Fifth Amendment. It outlines what the protections are and the rights are of people by the law in a case of, in this case, when you go to court, and what the government can and can't do, the federal government in this regard. So it's saying you have the right, and you are going to be guaranteed this right to have your case, if you go to court, heard before a grand jury. So if it's a capital crime, if it's a federal crime, then a grand jury, which means a jury of your peers, will be set up, and that jury will be used to decide if what you're being charged with is even actionable by the court. So they're going to look at whether or not your specific issue is going to go on to actually go to court, or if it should settle outside of court, or if it's not even illegal, or if it was legal. So they're going to look at kind of the basics and decide whether or not it should go to court. So that's the first step, is you have a grand jury that will look, and you're guaranteed that somebody will be doing that to decide whether or not you go to court. Now, I'm going to go through these step by step, but the self-incrimination, we're going to go over that in much more detail in a few moments, but in essence, it's that when you go to court, you do not have to basically incriminate yourself. A good way to say that is that if you're in court and I guess the other attorney asks you, did you do it, you can plead the Fifth. Now, notice Fifth Amendment, pleading the Fifth means that you can simply not answer. Now, doing that means you're not incriminating yourself, but you're forcing them to prove you're guilty. So it's a small kind of topic, but in essence, it's important because it's saying in the Constitution that they have to prove you are guilty of a crime, and you do not have to actually say that you are or not. It's giving you a freedom there. This note on double jeopardy. Double jeopardy, I've heard you use it in class before. It's something I'm pretty sure you understand, but it's guaranteeing that you as an individual, as a citizen of the United States, can't be charged on a crime more than once. So to clarify, you cannot be charged. So say you do something wrong and you get arrested. And say that happens on March 21st. That does not mean that if you commit the same crime on March 22nd, you can't be tried for it or convicted for it. But you can't be charged for the March 21st crime twice. So it's saying you can't be charged for one incident of a crime more than once. The Fifth Amendment also establishes due process, so it guarantees all citizens of the United States due process rights to a federal crime, which is an important note to make. And it talks about eminent domain. Eminent domain refers to that it's saying that the federal government is restricted. They are not allowed to come onto your property or come to you and say that they want your property, say your house, your land. They can't just go and take it. That's something that we might take for granted, but our government is limited by the Constitution and the Fifth Amendment. They cannot go out and just demand that what is yours becomes theirs, unless, in this case, they're willing to buy it. So if they're trying to put up power lines and they need your property to put those power lines in, they can't just take your land. They're gonna have to go in and buy your land off of you. Right, so as we're thinking about these due process issues, the Sixth Amendment is much more specific on court procedures. So the Sixth Amendment outlines what you are guaranteed when you go to court. And you are guaranteed a speedy and public trial. So that means that they can't kind of drag their feet on getting you into court and hold you in a holding cell. It has to be done as fast as they can. You're guaranteed an impartial jury in the locality of your crime. So wherever your crime took place, that's where you're going to have your court case. So that restricts them from trying you in California if you committed a crime in Virginia. You're going to be guaranteed that you know exactly what crime you're being charged with. So they have to inform you very explicitly for whatever crime it is that they are charging you with. You're guaranteed a right to a lawyer, and you're allowed to use, either through your lawyer or you as an individual, to obtain witnesses and have them questioned in front of a jury. So those are what's outlined in the Sixth Amendment. In the Eighth Amendment, it talks about your bail and cruel and unusual punishment. So bail, just in case you are unfamiliar with what bail is collateral that the courts will use to try to ensure that you will be in court. So if you get committed of a crime and you get arrested and you go to the holding cell, to the jail, they'll allow you to pay an amount of money, and it's supposed to be reasonable. So if you committed murder, it's going to be a lot of money that you're going to have to pay. If it's something minor, then it'll be a much less an amount of money. But the idea there is that when you pay the jail that money, that bail money, it's collateral saying if you come to court in however many weeks away court will be, you'll get your bail money back. We'll just give it right back to you. And so it's ensuring that you'll come back for the court hearing, but they're able to release you from the jail cell. So the Eighth Amendment is saying that it has to be in a reasonable amount of money for the crime that was committed. And then it also goes into protection from cruel and unusual punishment. Now, cruel and unusual punishment is going to be definitely argued in the courts a lot because it's rather vague what makes something cruel and unusual over not being cruel and unusual. Some argue the death penalty is inherently cruel and unusual because you're killing somebody. Others argue that it's done in such a way that it's painless and doesn't result in any sort of unusual acts. That's why they got rid of like the electric chair and that sort of thing. Now, cruel and unusual also, because of that, guarantees that when you get arrested, you're not going to be tortured or you're not going to be put into a dirty cell. You're going to be given rights in that interaction between you and the jailers that upholds that. And if that is denied, or if any of these rights are denied to you, you might have a chance to appeal your case to an appellate court or possibly get your charges dropped if your rights are denied. Now, there's in the actual Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment, they talk about due process rights. And this is really important. Due process in the Fifth Amendment says that the federal government cannot deprive any person of their life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So that's important there, the way it says the federal government cannot deprive any person of their life, liberty, or property without due process. So that's why we have courts, that's why we have, our entire system of government is set up to ensure that the government will not reach deep and take something from you without there being a process for you to argue your side, your due process. Now, where that failed is it didn't, at that point when they wrote this, it only referred to federal laws and federal courts. But the state courts were very much doing their own thing and acting in their own way. So that's why it was after the Civil War that the 14th Amendment had a due process clause in it. And that stated that states cannot make or enforce laws that deny federal rights given to citizens. So again, it's the states that cannot act unfairly or arbitrarily toward or discriminate against any person. So that's significant. The 14th Amendment is going to be extremely, extremely important for us as we study the judiciary and the civil rights, civil liberties. The 14th Amendment is important because it applies these it applies the due process in the Fifth Amendment to the states in the 14th Amendment, which makes the state legislators have to change their laws and change their court systems and their procedures to match it. Now I'm going to talk about the exclusionary rule and self-incrimination and a little more information. But in essence, the exclusionary rule is stating that if you're in court and you are charged with a crime and they present evidence that is used in that court, well, if that evidence was obtained illegally through violation of the search and seizure laws, then that evidence would have to be considered defunct and not be allowed to be used in the court. So in other words, if a police officer or a federal agent, if they are collecting evidence on you and that evidence was obtained without a warrant or without just cause, then even if that evidence is extremely damning or proves your guilt or innocence, it cannot be used if it was obtained illegally. And that rule is called the exclusionary rule. It's excluded from the courts if it was seized illegally. Now, this other concept of self-incrimination, we talked about it earlier, but in essence, it's when you hear people say, I plead the Fifth. Well, pleading the Fifth means that you're saying, based on the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, I'm legally not required in a criminal case to be a witness against myself. So I do not have to say something that will harm my standing in the court. And that's what's meant by self-incrimination. You have the option to remain silent. You have the option not to answer questions. And in that case, you're not being called witness against yourself. Alright, so thank you for listening. Hopefully this will help as we go forward. Hopefully hearing it from me, seeing it on a PowerPoint, answering questions on your paper, seeing it in your reading, and then again when we are in class and you actually get to hear and argue these court cases, keep these rules, keep these amendments in mind as you go. Oh, we have one more. Oh, yep, sorry guys. I forgot about equal protection under the law. So again, like I was saying with the 14th Amendment, huge, huge, huge. You're going to have to make sure you go and read the 14th Amendment. But it also talks about guaranteeing that those laws that are federal, it says that they get applied back down to the states. So no state shall make or enforce a law which shall abridge the privileges or the immunities of citizens of the United States. So no state shall make or enforce a law which takes away the privileges of an individual in the United States. So it's guaranteeing that everybody is protected in the law regardless of really anything. If you're a citizen, you need to be held to the same standard as any other citizen. And again, it says, it cannot deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So the 14th Amendment is spelling out the Equal Protection Clause. It's guaranteeing that all people be treated equally. The 15th Amendment, I have that in there because I think it's important. It's guaranteeing the right to vote for all people. It was during the Reconstruction era, after the Civil War. And it bases the right to vote by saying that it can't be restricted over issues of race or color. Now, that's a huge step in the right direction for getting equality set up throughout the country. But remember, it wasn't until the 19th Amendment that women were included into this notion of all people. So it's important to notice that you get equal protection, equal right under the law, regardless of who you are. But again, throughout our history, it takes time in some cases. And lastly, I thought maybe this would make you laugh. Obviously, all children can learn, but there are some exceptions. Have a good day.